Hello. Hi, everyone. Ciao. Ciao.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, hello. There is my cat in the background wanting more food. I'm trying to resist. Okay, so in case you hear some meows, you know why. Hello, everybody. Ciao. Ciao a tutti. Hello. Ciao Paola. Ciao Sandra. Ciao Laura. Okay, so as usual, we have a couple of minutes to let everybody arrive. Hello, Alison. Wonderful. We just had a couple of days. Hello. A lovely session where we had the chance to share and listen to each other with feedback from August practice time and the biophilic plan development and so on. You will find the recording tomorrow. So I downloaded it and I'm preparing a handout that goes along with that recording. So you will have the chance to work even deeper on your practices and on extracting the maximum possible learning from what you did in August, from your body, and in case you didn't have a body or didn't follow through your plan, you will anyway have the chance to reflect on this journey that we are doing together and all the things that we are talking about and co-creating in terms of learning. So, hello everybody. I think that we can start now with today's session, which is about starting a new part of our journey, and we are going to recap in a few moments our journey so far and what's ahead of us until the 18th of September. So from now until the 18th of September, we are going to be together. If you can be with us every Wednesday at this time. So I really hope that you will all be able to join in person, because offline and watching the recording is always a little bit less engaging, I think. So to start, as usual, I would like to invite you in we're going to have a very short centering practice today because there's a lot to cover. And so I would just like to invite you to take a moment to connect with your breathing, and I'm doing it with you as well. And just observe what's alive, what's most alive inside of you, inside your body, and which kind of perceptions come from your body as you just start engaging with it a little bit with some feel-good stretching moves. You can even stay sitting where you are. But just let your body respond to this intention to create a feeling of connection within yourself, a sense of ease, of presence. Just asking your body, what do you need now? To let go of any useless tension or contraction. And every tension or contraction we have in our body is also a tension or contraction that we have in our mind, in our brain. And let your body respond to what it most needs now to create a sense of ease, comfort, and pleasure within your limbs, within your joints. Just let's take a little time to explore your various joints from the feet upwards, And do any movement that can release any tension in your joints. Exploring all the joints towards the tip, the top of your head. Okay. And you can use movement to explore the joints and to let some fluidity come into the joints, as if your movement can move some butter or oil within your joints and make them really flowy and open. Spacious. All right. And let this exploration gradually become smaller and smaller. Until you find yourself just sitting in stillness with your own time. There's no hurry. When your exploration is small enough, you can just sit still on your chair, wherever you are. And notice, how does your body feel now? You can have your eyes closed or just take your eyesight a bit lower to create a space for self-connection. When you want, you can just notice what's most alive in you now compared to just a few minutes ago. And which perceptions come from your body, sensations. And how are you breathing? And as you inhale and exhale, you can also place a little piece of your attention on this group as well. Noticing that we are all connecting with the same space, with the same learning space across the world. When you want, you can even open your eyes and just connect visually with the rest of the people here. And with your time, activate your webcam so we can all visually connect. And we are going to take just a couple more breaths together, trying to maintain the connection with our own place here, as well as a shared place here through our computer. I'm breathing for myself, and I'm also breathing with these people. And as I breathe, I'm connecting to myself. And I'm also connecting to these people. And we are all also connecting with nature all around us. Perhaps you have a window nearby and can just give a look there as well. And you're breathing for yourself. You are breathing with these people, and we are all breathing with our planet. And all our planet is breathing with us, from one side of the world to the other. There is a breathing that we are all sharing with all the other living beings. And for a moment, we are all in this together. And thank you, everybody, for sharing this moment of centering with me. Thanks a lot. And so, before I start sharing my presentation, I would just like to ask you to share anything in the chat, like, I don't know, what are you feeling in this moment, or something you are grateful for today, just to have a sense of this community here and what's most alive in you. Even just a word, a color that represents how you feel now, whatever feels good to share, to just have a little sense of community before we dive into our brainy presentations. My sharing, I share it by voice instead of the chat, is gratefulness for this moment of shared silence and breathing. There is a tree, a cherry tree out here from my window, and I don't know, now it's completely still. And when I was practicing with you, the breathing, the shared breathing, it was all moving. So it seemed like really participating. So I just want to express gratefulness for this moment of deepness that we shared. So we have feeling connectedness, bright green energy, level 9, deep connection and relaxation, relaxed. I'm grateful for a roof over my head and feeling my breath. Grateful for an afternoon at the seaside, the waves, it rained a little bit. I felt completely peaceful. Wow, curiosity and grateful. Feeling my breath, feeling this moment. My body feels more soft. I am grateful for the rain last night. Grateful for spending time with my daughter today. Relaxation, connection, green, flowing like a river. The reminder that we are all in together was powerful. Grateful for this new beginning in today. River, relaxed and peaceful, I think. The color is sky blue. Feeling more alive in my hands and grateful for my beautiful tree outside my door, which is very still and quiet at the moment. My body feels good for a stretch. Wildlife participating. Thank you. And I'm always reading the chat, so it stays in the recording as well. So who's not here can also enjoy our comments. Right, so let's dive into today's session and let's start with a short recap of what we've been doing so far. So let me share the screen. If anything is not working, always please alert me immediately so we can proceed together. So in just a second, okay, we should have our presentation ready. So we started with our opening ritual and an outline of our ecosomatic coaching philosophy and some definitions in mid-July. And then we moved into the second webinar where we went into more precise definitions about nature connection, biophilia, embodiment, and contemplative practices. In this opening session, we were mainly addressing the coaching and ecosomatic thing. And this was like a deep dive into the 4 roots or the 3 roots of our ecosomatic coaching process. Then we had some practice weeks all over August, and 2 days ago, we just had this webinar to share reflections and questions and ideas and experiences from August practice. And now we will have 2 sessions, this one and the next one with Azzurra, about some key frameworks in our work. Today we will talk about ecopsychology, biomimicry, and the concept of primal intelligence, which actually came before the Nature Academy, Coaching Academy was born. And in the next session, we are going to cover positive psychology with Azzurra, and with me, the pinecone theory and the polyvagal theory applied to ecosomatic coaching, which will give you even more perspectives on why our work with embodiment, nature connection, and contemplation is so relevant for humans in general, and especially in our approach. Then we are going to have a session where we are going to basically link all the dots, talking about coaching and self-coaching with nature, and providing also some perspectives on how to apply all this journey and all these frameworks and tools and definitions, not only to your personal growth journey and your work with yourself, but also if you work with people, also in your work with people, basically. And we are going to have a touch of Socratic philosophy applied to all these, linking everything together. And then we are going to have our last session, which will project us into our wider possibility of impact. And I don't want to disclose too much on this, but it's going to be an expansion of the possibility to use all this approach for the transformation of the paradigm and the culture, basically, that we all are co-creating for the future. So this is our journey so far and what's ahead of us. And now let's dive into the first piece of today's session, which is ecopsychology. I have been trained on ecopsychology and on ecotherapy by some of the, I think, most amazing ecopsychologists and ecotherapists that I know, and you will find all the references about their work in the handout, of course. They are Linda Bazell-Salzman, Craig Chalquist, and Andy Fisher, and I studied with them at Pacifica University in the States with a certificate in ecopsychology. And so with them, this was, I think, 10 years ago, I studied with them. I have explored the wide field of ecopsychology, and it's really, really wide. It has many different approaches into it. And since the late 90s, when this word came out, the late 90s or mid 90s approximately until today, the whole field of ecopsychology has grown immensely, especially in the past 2 decades. Basically, we can define ecopsychology as the study of the relationship between humans and the natural world through ecological and psychological principles aimed at understanding and expanding the connection between people and nature, adopting a sustainable lifestyle for oneself and also for the earth and other living beings. This is the most recent evolution of the field of ecopsychology and its application. And also remedying the alienation of contemporary society from nature and the resulting psychological effects on individuals and communities. So while ecopsychology is the study of the psychological relationship with the rest of nature, so the theoretical, cultural, and critical framework for the practice of ecotherapy is basically the practice of the ecopsychology framework. So I'm placing here the definition that Linda Bazell-Salzman gave. in her book, which you will find in the handout, mentioned in the handout. And she says, healing and growth through healthy interaction with the natural world based on bodily, sensory, emotional, cognitive, and relational activation. So you can see that there are a lot of overlapping aspects between ecotherapy and what we have been going through so far in our journey. It's really about reviving our felt sense of belonging and interaction with the natural world. But in therapy, there is a therapeutical lending, while in coaching, of course, the outcome is different, and the focus is different, and the tools are different. But there is some overlapping in these terms, terminology, as you can see. Other terms for ecotherapy, which you may have heard, and there are so many now, is like green therapy, nature therapy, earth-centered therapy, and also within this wider field of nature-based therapy or ecotherapy, we have lots of very well-researched branches like pet therapy, for example, or equine-assisted therapy, and so on. So the field is really growing and expanding and exploding, I would say. And I interpret this as a sign that we so much need to go back to our roots, to our felt sense of interconnectedness with nature. This is good for our brains, our bodies, and for our health in general as well. So yeah, basically we can define ecotherapy as applied ecopsychology. Just like therapy, psychotherapy is applied psychology. And over the years, and you will notice something similar is happening also in the positive psychology field. We are going to listen to this from the studies of Azzurra, who is actually studying for a new master's degree in the UK, exactly on positive psychology in coaching. So she is going to be our expert on this. So there has been an evolution from the so-called level 1 ecotherapy, and this again is a distinction that you will find in Linda Basel-Salzman book. Level 1 ecotherapy and level 2 ecotherapy. In level 1 ecotherapy, nature is conceived within traditional scientific boundaries as a resource, a tool, a background to the therapeutic experience, like a utility. While in level 2, and I'm mentioning this not because we are doing an ecotherapy course, but because there are some parallels, as you can notice, with our philosophy and approach. In level 2 ecotherapy, nature is a participant in the process of care, a co-therapist, just like we call her a co-coach, a co-facilitator of the path of personal and collective growth. So in the case of level 2 ecotherapy, we want to initiate a reciprocal relationship of mutual benefit between man and the nature. So we have an anthropocentric view, nature in service of man purpose, and a life-centered view in level 2 ecotherapy. This image comes from my studies with Andy Fisher, which is one of these famous ecopsychologists I was mentioning before, one of the fathers of ecopsychology. Especially, he wrote an amazing book, and he teaches radical ecopsychology. And he calls it radical ecopsychology because it's really about going back to the roots of our interconnectedness with nature. And in this course that I took with him, I studied with him also in Schumacher College in the UK. He talks about our paradigm we are into, which is basically capitalist, mechanistic, and positivist, where there has been this big split between psyche, society, and nature. So by dividing these different realms of our experience, we have created a disconnected paradigm, which sees everything as a separate and to be studied separately. And so from this, psychology came the field of study of the relationship between society and psyche, between the person and the other persons. Ecopsychology became the study of the relationship between psyche and nature, and ecology becomes the study of the relationship between society and nature. While this is the perspective of the paradigm of the radical ecopsychology by Andy Fisher, we should consider psyche and society as part of nature. And again, you can find it in this different approach, different names, but the same concepts that we are working on together since the beginning of our journey. Some other words that perhaps you may be familiar with is that we need to move our culture system from egocentric to ecocentric. It's another way to say this is the same thing. It's all about readopting a systemic view of our life, replacing ourselves in the wider web of life we all belong to with all the other living beings. In one of the previous handouts and workbooks, you found, I don't know if you have already watched it, the mention of this video. So now I will replace it once more in the handout for you to watch. It's a 30 minutes conference of Andy Fisher at Schumacher College in the UK, where he talks exactly about this model and the perspective of radical ecopsychology and this emergence of a new holistic paradigm to see ourselves, our psyches in relationship with everything else and as part of everything else. So this is my adaptation of these concepts, where I'm using the same words that we have used since the beginning, since we mentioned the definitions of body, earth, and place of Andrea Olsen. I hope you still remember it. It was like the very first webinar we did together. So we like to see everything as an aspect of our planet. And for this, you're going to have a new audio guided practice, which I call this practice, I call it just a piece of place. And it's really about shifting our perception to feeling just a piece of the place where you will be when you will practice this new audio guide with my voice. Okay, so before diving into the concept of primal intelligence, I would like to listen if you have questions, ideas, reflections, skepticism, anything that you would like to share. You can do it either unmuting yourself and speaking with your voice or in the chat. Will we get these slides, Isabel? Yes, of course, as usual. Rachel, how does the new paradigm with everything as an aspect of our planet conceive its relationship to the cosmos, solar system, galaxy, universe, etc.? Well, I think that when we use the word systems, it actually extends to everything that exists and not just to our planet. The thing that comes to mind now is that the Earth system, our planet, has very specific conditions which are related to the actual position of the planet in relationship with the sun, the existence of the atmosphere, and all the conditions that make life possible on our planet. So this is a system in itself belonging to wider systems, and we know that the solar system belongs to even wider systems. So it's really systems within systems, and every system is nested within wider systems. So I think that this systemic view extends to pretty much everything that we know exists so far. I'm not sure I answered, and I also welcome other contributions from the people online. Just, Rachel, let us know what you think, and anybody else, if you're willing to contribute to this question, I'm happy to listen. Jonathan says, Claudia and I keyed in on these charts as particularly compelling for informing pathways to exploration through nature. Ah, how interesting. Let me open it. Well, this would require a little bit more explanation. If you want to speak, I'm so curious and happy to listen. If you want, I'm really happy.
These came from a TED talk that you had listed from John Young, Repairing Emotional Isolation by Reawakening Deep Nature Connection. And it was, first of all, it was helpful to see sort of a rubric or a formulation and connection between so many of these different attributes in each one of these four charts, right? So, and and then to also imagine one layered on the next as a representation of the next, right? So number one, it gives a multidimensionality to how you're thinking about the organization of different concepts, how they relate to your sensory experience, and then how they relate to the world. And then interestingly enough, Claudia picked up a book she had about, and Claudia, you have to send me the name of that book again, but it was a book about how animals perceive the world. And I really just thought to myself, you know, even for example, my dog, right? I always watch how my dog goes nose first into the world, right? So we're like eyes first, frontal cortex, and the dog is moving with the nose first. And then I just thought to myself, in what way does this creature, in what way does knowing, just the idea of knowing and understanding manifest as a result of a different hierarchy of sensory experience, and how does it persist? How does it thrive? How does it experience joy, pain? How does it protect itself? And how do these senses play into the sort of information loop that occurs? And how can those thoughts about whether it's a dog, a dove, a snake, a rock, how can all of that be thought of to help guide people to reconsider their senses and the usefulness and the learnings that they could gain from them through the consideration of the natural, and then of course all of these other aspects. So, it's a really compelling idea that I think is like too big for me to wrap my head around right now, but something I'd like to dive into.
Yes, absolutely. Very, very interesting. And one thing that that relates to what you're saying and that I got from John Young as well is this concept that brain patterning happens over sensory input. So the richest our sensory experience, the richest our brain patterning and interconnections. So yeah, it's really very compelling area of exploration. And by the way, these are the attributes of connection in the words of John Young. So he says, when we cultivate our nature connectedness, our connection, these are the qualities that develop in our life, in our being. So that's really interesting. Very, very nice. And thanks for sharing this, Jonathan. Claudia, I'm not sure if you want to add anything to Jonathan's comments on your work together.
For this chart, I think the other thing that struck me was because I had been drawn into a particular part, it was more to do with I felt it was quite grounding because I noticed these images of the birds and the trees and everything. And Jonathan was saying, how different it might be depending on the experience that we're having in that moment. Like, for example, if you've just experienced witnessing the birth of a child or something, maybe you would be drawn to something different or you would be attracted to something different. So it's also a way to explore. There's just so many possibilities actually in how this can be used for exploration, which I found really fascinating.
Yes, it can even become a chart to map out all the things that you are, how much are you exploring each of these areas, each of these senses, and how much do you feel you are connecting with this quality. It's really, really interesting. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Let me read some more comments. Okay. Diana. Yeah, please.
Yeah, we're talking about systems. on the island here at home, we had massive fires here that burnt most of the, like half, 3/4 of the island. And the systems I look at and sort of try, it's quite, I think, out of our control as such, that lightning struck. What we always did with a lightning strike, human behavior, was to go and put it out. So we always grew up with putting that fire out. But it was nature that did that. So it burnt very, very fiercely. And then what we also did within that system, we planted other trees. We had blue gum plantations, we had various things, which caused the fire to be very, very extreme. So our interaction, I feel, with nature was that we broke into that system and thought we could control it to an extent, but because we'd been putting those fires out from lightning, it created more fuel in our national parks and in all areas of our place, which then I saw masses of dead animals everywhere. But when we were doing the practices, just recently I went out there with my son. Now that was burnt charcoal to the ground. There wasn't a tree left. Okay, it looked like Armageddon in a lot of parts of that area. We went back and now the trees are all growing back. The system is replacing itself. So I look at that and I go, well, the other parts of it is that fire's a cleanser. Okay, it disinfects. It's got a system within it. There's a system within a system within a system that actually does its job. Now, sorry, I'll get a little bit lost here, but native seeds cannot germinate. Some native seeds cannot germinate unless they have smoke, get to a certain temperature of heat and fire, and being burnt. So the scary thing for us, I feel, across the world, we see all these massive fires, but they have been there forever. We have placed ourselves amongst that with buildings and that, and then we say we have climate change. There's issues there that I think are a lot broader and a lot more thing. But the other thing is, I've took photos of kangaroos there and birds. Sorry, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, we need to
sorry.
Just come to a close so we can proceed. If it would be greatly appreciated. Yeah, if you can just close your thinking.
Yeah, and just the part. Yeah, sorry, I'm sorry I linger on. There was echidnas there. We stopped and got photos of echidnas. We got stopped and got photos of kangaroos. We got stopped. I took photos of birds, and there was many birds in that place. Now there was no human did not create that back, and I think that's an issue that really makes us feel where is our place. We're striving to find our place, I believe, and our connectionness to that. But we have no control over that. That happened. Human didn't do that. That's just how, yeah. And that.
Thank you, Brenton.
Yeah, that's how I.
Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, let's go back to our presentation. And we're going to the next, I would say, yeah, one of the key concepts that we use also to design our group coaching experiences or just as a framework in our heads. It's the concept of, in Italy, we call it intelligenza primitiva, which really works very well. The primitiva, which would be primitive in English, in Italian works really well. While in English, I know that primitive is not such a great translation, I think. So I'm still uncertain. Please help me, because this is a point that is not really sure in my head yet. So I'm still looking for the right word. I will give you this presentation, and at the end, you will help me understand which would be the best word for this concept. So now here I'm using the concept primal instead of primitive, but let's see, and perhaps you can give me some insights on that. So this whole concept, which is basically, in its essence, how can we reconnect, reawaken, or refeel ourselves really connected with this intelligence that belongs to our being, and that is something beyond our culture. I mean, something before, and like a form of intelligence that is shared within our human species. So this concept came to me through the primitive child theory, which is a theory I studied at the university in Milan. It was, I think, the year 1997 when I was studying with this professor, Fulvio Scaparro. He's a psychologist and a psychopedagogist. And what he said basically is that what is born today is not the baby, a baby of the 21st century, but it's a primitive child, because the needs that we have today are the same of our Paleolithic ancestors. The biological needs, the psychological needs, the relational, the social needs, the environmental needs are still the same of our ancestors, because basically who we are and what we are psychologically and biologically comes out of a very long process of natural evolution as the best response. So our body, our brain, whatever we are, is the best response in terms of adaptation to a certain environment. So when we are born today, who is born today has the same basically brain of our ancestors, of some anthropologists say 300,000 years ago, some others say 200,000 years ago. Anyway, our brain is wired in a way that is the same of our very old ancestors, dating at least to Paleolithic times. So the idea of this theory that he poses in one of his books and his lessons is that these 200 years of industrial, since the Industrial Revolution, or 50 years since the onset of the technological and digital context that we live by today, have not been enough to really reshape and rewire our brain. Of course, our brain is ever-changing and is adapting, but the basic structures are still those ones of our ancestors. So I like to call primitive intelligence or primal intelligence a form of intelligence that is comprised of 3 dimensions. So it's somatic intelligence, where soma and body are intended in the meaning that we shared in the very first webinar in terms of an aspect of the planet. So, and also body as an all-encompassing term defining our being as humans, so including the psyche. Collective intelligence, which is the intelligence that emerges from a group, from a system. So in this case, for me, when I work with groups, it's the intelligence that emerges from that fabric of relationship. And when I studied with Fritjof Capra, you may have heard of him. He's a very famous physicist. The first very famous book he wrote in the 70s was The Tao of Physics. And then he went on further developing his systemic theory, basically. And I studied with him the systems view of life. And he defines collective intelligence with the metaphor of a molecule of sugar. And he says, sugar is made by carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen in a certain proportion with a certain relationship with each other. But if you taste carbon, it's not sweet. I mean, glucose. So we are talking about the glucose molecule. If you taste hydrogen, it's not sweet. Oxygen is not sweet. But together, in a certain quantity with a certain relationship with each other, then sweetness emerges. So this is the same for collective intelligence. Given a certain system of individuals and a certain kind of relationships among relationship among them, then what emerges is the unique collective intelligence of that group. This concept has been studied by other researchers like Rupert Sheldrake as well, to justify or explain the behavior of animals of the same species, like birds, flock of birds migrating, or just in terms of shared field of awareness. So it's a very interesting topic for me. And the third dimension of what I like to call primal intelligence is ecosystemic intelligence. So the intelligence that belongs to natural system and the ecosystems. So all these are intertwined, and of course, somatic and collective intelligence are nested inside the wider ecosystemic intelligence, but I like to have them separated because it provides me a way to develop tools to connect with one or the other. So yeah, it's a possibility to develop different approaches and practices, and also to see how they are all interconnected. So for me, often this is a way that I use to frame the intents or the purposes of some practices in terms of deep reconnection with our primal intelligence, which is reconnecting with the inner compass that we all have and that we share with the natural living systems and all the other living beings. Something that we know without knowing, a compass that has to do with our natural ethics. And that can guide our behavior with ourselves, with others, and with the earth. And talking about ecosystemic intelligence, we are going to move to the last piece of this presentation, and then I'm going to open again to reflections and questions, so we can have these two pieces all together. So the last piece of today's presentation is the one about biomimicry. I don't know how many, if any of you have ever heard this word. It's been popularized since 2 decades in the late 90s. It comes from an ancient Greek word, which is bios, meaning life, and mimicking. So we may translate it the conscious emulation of life's genius. In Italy, the best translation is biomimesis. Sometimes it's translated biomimetica, or in English biomimetics, but basically biomimetics is a subgroup of biomimicry, which is like the bigger concept containing many different subgroups of application of this approach to nature's genius, basically. This definition comes from the work of Janine Benyus, which is the natural scientist who popularized this word in the late 90s. And she defines this as adapting nature's best ideas to create sustainable and regenerative solutions, systems, and ways of living that create conditions conducive to life. This is the book that she wrote in 1997. It's a great book. I know it's 2 decades old, but it's really full of ways to apply nature's genius in different realms of our life, from medicine to politics to economics. So it's really a suggested reading, and you will find it in the handout, of course. So here's Janine Benyus, and she's also the founder of the Biomimicry Institute and co-founder of Biomimicry 3.8, which is the international organization that I studied with, all these that I'm explaining. And that is also the creator of the only program in the world of, it's a master's degree in biomimicry, and it's in the University of Arizona. Unfortunately, I don't have that degree, but it's still in my dreams. Who knows, sooner or later. In this book, she defines biomimicry as the conscious emulation of life's genius as a survival strategy for the human race. I wouldn't use the term race anyway. It's a bit of surprise in this slide. I think it must be an error, but I will check. I will use the word species. The path to sustainable development. And she says, the more our world works like the natural world, the longer we can last on this earth that is ours, but not ours alone. So learning about the natural world, she says, is one thing, and learning from the natural world is the real switch, a profound change in the way we look at nature, and I would add also in a way that we perceive ourselves in relationship with her. So she says again, biomimicry invites us to consider not only what we can extract from nature, but what we can learn from her. So the basic assumption in these concepts is that the more we resemble nature, the more we will have its capacity for resilience, innovation, change, and adaptation. So we may use these ideas to ask ourselves, how can we live on Earth with the same elegance as the living systems around us? Or with the same beauty, with the same efficiency, with the same resiliency, with the same evolutionary ability as the living systems around us? Nature has resolved all the problems we are going through today. It has already faced the toughest challenges we can imagine. It has already discovered how to improve the performance of every living unit. So biomimicry is about learning from nature. How can we solve any kind of problem? How can we look at our topics with the lenses of nature, through her strategies, through her time-tested strategies, through that R&D lab, which is 3.8 billion years old. So it's about getting inspired by nature. It's about innovating the ways we live and we look at our topics. It's basically a problem-solving approach or an inventive approach. And this is why it's so interesting also to have a biomimicry lens on our eyes, especially when I work with coaching, for example, with my clients. So we may have our topics and then ask ourselves, how would nature do this? How would nature solve this? And look at nature's principles, strategies, and functions that look like our challenges, our problems, our desires, and use the perspective of nature to create new ideas, resources, and solutions for our things. So there are various ways we integrate a biomimicry approach in coaching and in our work. One is connecting with natural coaches. You will have a practice in the workbook for this. And all of our coaches, this is one of the practices that our graduated coaches have to complete before getting the diploma. So working with at least 5 different natural coaches and share in a written essay what they got from their natural coaches. Then we have the animal learning principles, which I'm not sure we are going to cover, but it may be a video for self-paced learning after the end of the course for you, so you can at least have a touch of this. And this comes from my studies with John Young. Life guiding principles. I'm going to tell you something more about this in a moment, and you are going to have a workbook to work on applying to yourself some of life's guiding principles. And then we have the 8 natural archetypes compass, which you also will get to know more about before the end of this course. So these are some of the ways we integrate biomimicry, and these are life's guiding principles. Okay. When we talk about life's guiding principles, here you find just 8, but it's a lot more. So I just selected some of them because, for example, the Biomimicry 3.8 Institute has organized the life's guiding principle in a different way with different names and also with different concepts. In Janine Benio's books, you find some of these principles and some others as well. And Giles Hutchins, you will find his books in the handout as well. He has another way to see life's guiding principles, and Fritjof Capra as well. And these are the only people that I studied, but for sure there are many more out there which will have recreated, reshaped, or redesigned life's guiding principle in their preferred way. So this is just a way to frame this topic. It's not comprehensive. It's just my way for the purpose of giving you ideas to apply some of life's guiding principles to your challenges as well, which is the content of the workbook on this topic specifically. So we may define life's guiding principles as the principles through which nature has been evolving life on Earth for 3.8 billion years, generating conditions conducive to life for all the inhabitants of our planet, of the biosphere. So these are the principles, but before diving into these ones, because you will also have a dedicated workbook with the description of these, so I just want to check the time and also how are we doing so far, and also check for questions, reflections. I can see some new messages in the chat. Thanks, Jonathan, for providing the link to the TED Talk of John Young. Any comment, ideas? What is emerging in your awareness as we touched on these topics? How do you feel they're, I don't know, which kind of value or interest do you see in this? How would you comment so far? Also, if you have any questions or doubts. Looks like, okay, I think biomimicry is fascinating. Just raise your hand if you can, if you ever studied anything about biomimicry or heard about it before. Brenton, Caroline, Jonathan, and Laura, and Claudia. Wonderful, and Valentina. Wow, that's, and Isabel as well. That's a lot. Usually it's no hands are raised in most of my webinars. So I'm very happy about this.
I've just for everyone with biochemistry, I've done a little bit of research on it. It's really, really interesting. I think it's a modern thing that needs to happen. It's going to be hard against governments and that sort of stuff. But there's a gentleman, if you look at Manhattan Island, there's an architect who's working with biochemistry in redesigning Manhattan Island. I think it's really interesting. Also, Tamsin Woolley Baker is working with him, and she is brilliant from her studies, and they're joining together. I wished and hoped for our island that I could get those to come over here and do a study on our island, because we're in the process, and it goes into economies, it goes into every aspect, it goes into nature and how we can all interact and have a 50-50 concept. So I've been really exploring that because I'd like to see the island have that put in place, because right now we've got a lot of tourism, or we've got a lot of things, and this island could completely change. But I think something like this, a system like this, and this information can do a completely better study on how we can actually put it together properly for all of us. So I think it's really exciting. I really do. So yeah, so
Yeah.
Tams and Woolley Baker is brilliant.
Yeah.
And really have a look at Manhattan Island and the gentleman there. He's an architect, but now he is combining them all together to redesign Manhattan Island, and it's excellent, I think. So
Thanks a lot.
so
I
if you
don't
Google
know.
that,
Yeah, I don't know the first name you mentioned, but Tamsin, I know her. She's written amazing books. I strongly suggest her, especially if you work with teams. There is a beautiful work that she published. It's about getting inspiration from superorganisms to design teamwork experiences and empower basically teams. You will find her in the resources, but I've never heard of the guy you mentioned before, the
yeah,
architect.
sorry, Diana. If you Google, if they go on and Google Tams and Woolley Baker and also Manhattan Island, with
Okay.
her, you'll see a podcast with him. And when her and him are joined together on that podcast
Okay.
and talk about restructuring Manhattan Island, it is absolutely brilliant. Really
Wonderful.
worth
Yes.
listening to. It is excellent on this subject.
Thanks a lot. And
I'm not
also
sure
for
of
mentioning that biomimicry. Okay, now here we are looking at biomimicry for the purpose of applying the principles to ourselves, to people, to human systems, basically, in terms of personal growth or self-reflection. But biomimicry originated in the 60s as an inventive approach to design new products, new materials, new technologies. So one of the very earliest examples is, for example, the robot who went on Mars, which was designed based on the structure of a spider as a model for walking on disconnected soils very effectively and fast. So this is one of the very earliest examples of biomimicry applied to design. And now it's really exploding its application in architecture, as Brenton was mentioning, in, again, industrial design, materials production. Some colleagues of mine have realized a plant in Greece to treat water, saline water, using the same principle of the roots of the mangroves, for example, to have drinkable water from salt water without chemicals, without any energy intensive process. So this is just another application that you can see is not really related to our self-reflection. And that's the spirit of biomimicry mainly, to do things like nature does. And the Biomimicry Institute does an immensely valuable work with lots of great companies exactly for this. So it's really worth exploring and getting to know more about this. Okay. Yeah, the human personal development application of biomimicry is very, very recent. I'm not sure if there's anything out there, honestly, but it's just that I attended many workshops, and my interest was in importing biomimicry in coaching. So I'm not sure if there's anything else out there about this, but there may be reasonably. Okay. And
sorry, Diana, I know.
Yeah.
Sorry, Diana, I'm not. I've got it's Harry Oogie. I think it's UVEGI. Is that other gentleman that I was talking about?
If you
So
just can
Harry,
place it in the chat.
I'll put that. Yeah, I will do that.
Perfect. Okay. Okay, then to step back, capitalism, mechanistic, positivist, and the disassociation, etc. The role of capitalism mechanism seem self-evident. I'm curious about how positivism figures in the equation. I think, okay, my take on this is that positivism is actually built on mechanism, on a mechanistic perspective, like science, since its onset, has tried to separate mind and matter. So basically, this is the link, I think. Just tell me what you think about this. So we will talk more about this, by the way, in one of the last chapters, when we will talk about Mr. René Descartes and its relationship with all this. So we may go back to this topic in a couple of sessions. Okay, so let me read some more comments so that they can remain in the recording. The more our world works, so appreciation for what I was quoting from Janine Thought. The more our world works like the natural world, the longer we can last on this earth that is ours, but not just ours. Yeah, it gives a way forward. One of the beautiful workshops that they do at the Biomimicry Institute, and by the way, anything I'm enthusiastic about, and I tell you this is great, I don't earn a single commission, just so it's clear, it's just my pure enthusiasm. I don't earn a commission for anything, a product, a course, any of the teachers I mentioned, nothing, just to be clear, just in case. And one of the courses that they do is think like an ecosystem, which I think is just a brilliant way to define how we should all think about our life endeavors. So Reinventing Organization, another great book by Frédéric Laloux, speaks to this, that companies that will succeed today need to adopt certain principles of nature, such as growing organically, etc. Yes, absolutely. Another great book. And I will add some more to this list, which is now really exploding. Another great one is Natural Intelligence, and you will find that too in the handout. Experiencing lots of excitement, especially about biomimicry, which, without being aware of that name, has been a key personal growth, development, and coping lens for me. Also frustration that it has taken me so long to learn about so many great thinkers and resources. I'm hungry to read them. Yeah, this is what typically happens to most of the people who attend my courses. They develop, and I know lots are here, they develop a very long reading list and become frustrated because time is short and they cannot read everything. But over time, who knows? Okay. Voila. Okay, wonderful. So let's move on to the very last piece, going a bit deeper into these life's guiding principle concepts. So the first one is a statement about the basic condition of life on Earth. So life evolves and grows and can happen on Earth because the Earth is at a certain distance from the sun and with a certain atmosphere around it. So this is the real basic condition, like we may call it operating condition of life on Earth. So nature lives off the sun. So the sun, what do you think can represent in our life? How can we translate some ideas in the chat? How can we translate this principle applied to our life as humans? What comes to mind? Energy, nourishment, finding warmth. Light energy, fire, warmth. Growth. Yes, and also think about what actually the sun is. So you are referring to fire, warmth, especially the sun. The sun is really this continuous firework, we may say. So it's fire, it's light. Human connection as our sun, a necessary condition for thriving. Okay, yes. So the way I like to intend this first life principle is that we are fire people. What do you mean with this, Jonathan?
So I often say that one of the reasons when I occasionally start smoking and then I stop again, and everyone says, well, it's because of the chemicals and this, that, and the other. But I think that the reason that smoking was such an ancient tradition is because of you talked about this primal brain. And like the moment in which humanity cultivates fire as a tool changes our relationship to everything. It's one of, the pivot points of what's possible and what's not for our most basic survival. And so I think that we are very much, I think there's a reason that Prometheus is such a powerful mythology for us. And I think that fire is it's more than just energy. It's creation for us and it's survival for us, and it intertwines those two things. And so I think that living off the sun is like, and of course, like we are stardust, so to speak, right? So not to get too cheesy about it, but I think that I've always been really, really fascinated with the draw that almost every human has with fire. If you're sitting at a campsite, you can sit and you can just watch that fire. It's almost like a trance. It's one of the easiest ways to fall into what I think of as like a deep trance, even more than rain or ocean, or in any case.
Yeah,
it's
hypnotic. It takes us back to all the times. Yeah, it has a lot. So fire is another big topic, especially with in-person workshops we do. The fire experience is really one of the key experiences. So yeah, okay, the perspective that I give you on this principle is mine, and any other perspective can be as valid. So this is important for me to say it, because when we enter the realm of interpretations or meanings, attribution, it's always very personal. So for me, this first principle is like, which are translates into this question for myself, which is, which are my operating conditions? The operating conditions that help me have the energy I need to be the person I am. So this first principle invites a reflection on your essentials, the essential ingredients that you need to work properly as in your best energy and the best aspects of yourself. So this is a question, a topic about your energy, what hinders it, what empowers it, which are the basic practices or aspects of your life that you need to nurture to ensure that you have the energy you need to be the person you want to be in all your relationships. So you will find this in the handout. And now that I look at these principles that I've been writing, at least some time ago, I think a couple of years ago, every time I look at them, I find something new and a different interpretation of them. So not only this is my personal interpretation, but it's my personal interpretation of today. And perhaps if I know some of you have taken other courses, you will find that now I'm sharing different things from the past, and that's totally fine because we all changed. So second point, life, this comes from Fritjof Capra. Life is autopoietic. Autopoietic means self-organizing from the inside. So this second principle refers to our inner motivation. And what is moving us, what is driving us, which are the things that engage us and that move our motivation. And also, so this is a reflection about intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic motivation, what drives us from the inside, what drives us from the outside. And the focus is how can we empower our way to self-motivate ourselves, our autonomy, our agency. So basically, intrinsic motivation, agency, and the ability to nurture and cultivate our ability to act and enact what we want and what we like, and any boundary we feel in this area that may need some deeper reflection, and any boundary we may want to dissolve or transform. The third principle, adapts form to function, really relates to how evolution works, basically. So let's take, for example, our hand. Our hand is the best form adapted for grabbing. Now also for caressing, we may say, and to do many other creative things. But basically, this shape, so this form, is the best adaptation for the function of grabbing and taking. So this third principle points to a reflection on how the form of my life, what I do, my schedule, my plans, how I organize my time and my energy. So the form that I give to my life endeavors, how does it reflect the function that I want my life to fulfill? So this is a reflection on how our daily routines, how we use our energy, and how can we adapt the form of our daily life to the function that we really want it to fulfill. 4, banks on diversity. So life banks on diversity. Diversity and biodiversity is the single most important driver of human evolution. And one of the professors I studied with at the university, Stefano Mancuso, in the first lesson of this master's degree I took, said, wherever we see in life's history, in life's evolution, 3.8 billion years, wherever we see a leap in the evolutionary journey of life, we see the integration of something diverse. This is how the plant cell came out, by integrating the chloroplast in a different cell. This is how the human cells developed, the first animal cells, living cells, developed by integrating the powerhouse of the mitochondrion in an older archaic cell. And so he says that every time we see a giant leap in the evolution, we see the integration of diversity. So this is a reflection on how diverse is your set of competencies, is your life experiences, your daily life experiences. It may even include some of the charts that Jonathan was sharing before. So how diverse is your experience of nature? What is your relationship with diversity? Is there any specific diverse something that you fear or that you embrace easily? So reflection on how diversity is expressed in your life and in your relationship. 5, values local expertise and relationship. This is an invitation to reflect on how connected are you to your places and to the people and the communities, not only humans, on your place. How do you feel connected locally to your places, with your work or with your friendships? Or so the ability to interconnect and create alliances with local networks, local communities is really life supporting. This is one of the interesting topics that I always invite my clients who are looking to expand, for example, their job opportunities. This is a very important lens because for some jobs especially, the more connected you are to your communities, the more richer is your life and also your job opportunities for some. aspects in particular. So this is the point number 5 is really an invitation to reflect on your alliances and on the communities you belong to. And yeah, you will find questions on this. Point 6, moderates excesses from within. This point is about how and how much are you able to modulate and moderate the excesses of your life experience on your own. Like how, okay, one of the first question is what would you define an excess, if any, in your life? And how are you able to handle it on your own by self-regulating? So this, the 6th point is about self-regulation. And when do you experience it? How do you experience it? Is there anything to improve or change in this? And this is especially applicable to emotion management, for example. Point 7, recognizes and respects limits. This is one of the cornerstone of how an ecosystem works and how also animals and plants really are able to recognize, have feedback to recognize what is a limit, a boundary, and honor and respect it. So this point is about reflecting on what do you perceive as a boundary or a limit in your life, and what is a boundary or a limit that you should consider more in terms of respecting it, and which other boundaries or limits instead can be flexible and can be expanded, for example, or even is there any limit, perceived limit in your life that you really feel it's time to dissolve, to find a wider expression of your personal potential, of your talents. But point number 7 is really in terms of natural intelligence, the acknowledgement of which limits should you really, really honor and respect, because it's about survival, it's about thriving and honoring and the something important. Often this point relates to an overdoing that some people experience in their lives. It's about, again, some of these points are interconnected. So this point again can be connected to the first one, how you use your energy. So it's a reflection on all these points. And the 8th point is really this thinking insistence that opens up. So life creates conditions conducive to life. So it's this point invites you to think, what is your wider impact on the systems you belong to? Which conditions are you creating for life to thrive after you and through you, through what you are doing and what you are leaving behind you? It's an invitation to reflect on your footprints, on your legacy. You will find a quote in the workbook from one of my teachers, Maya Kornakian. She spent some time studying with the Lakota tribe in the United States. For some years, she went there to stay with them. She adopted a grandma, and so she kept visiting her until she died for many years. And when she was there, one of the things that she learned is this principle, which for me really relates to these last principles that we saw. And she said, they said to me, whenever you want to consider a decision of yours or a project you're considering, assessing, always ask yourself these 3 questions. One is, does this project, decision, choice bring life to me? Second question, does this thing bring life to others? And third question, does this thing live life of the rest. So for life to keep on giving life to all the rest, you first need it to give life to yourself. So these are some of the reflections that have been inspired by life principles. Any comments on these? We still have 5 minutes. Can you repeat the third item? I think my connection was unstable. Yes, the third question is, does this thing, choice, project, whatever, leave life behind it? So life to you, life to others, and does it leave life behind it? Which is, how is it nurturing or cultivating life beyond it? Okay, I hope this now is that I was not frozen anymore. What comments, reflections in the end, at the end of this webinar are alive in you? Just take some time to review all these contents. What do you sense inside that you can share? Claudia says, love these questions. So you will find all these questions for self-reflection inspired by the life principles in the workbook, in a dedicated workbook. Caroline enjoyed it today. Thank you. I'm glad. Any keyword or short sentence that captures the essence of what's most alive in you now in terms of thinking or feeling? Reflective mood, inspired. Mm-hmm. Sugar molecule, that was a great metaphor. I always quote it in most of my courses as well, especially when I work with teams in the companies as well. That's a great metaphor. For basically, it's a great metaphor, I think, for any emergent property, like trust, or especially for, collective intelligence. I like it a lot. Feeling very inspired, feeling in the right place. Thank you. Exploration, inspired. Yeah, that's usually the impact of biomimicry. Usually I dedicate to biomimicry a longer presentation. Consider that all the topics we are seeing, usually we see it in brief, but usually it's a 2 hours webinar. And most of the students from past cohorts here know that every topic has a very deep exploration. So we're just touching some of the key concepts and also providing you lots of resources with the handouts to go even deeper than what I'm doing with you now, also to inspire some greed to learn more. I keep thinking of the spider webs and how we can be inspired by it. Sounds like a natural coach for you. Perhaps that can be an additional exploration, Caroline. Great. Is there any question or observation that you would like to share in this last minute before we say goodbye? And also, I think I activated the transcription for this webinar in Zoom. So I will see if it's available for this webinar as well. And also like a meeting recap, which is amazing. Sometimes it's hilarious. Sometimes it really provides a great way. I may share that as well. I will forward it in case there's anything interesting. Wonderful. I don't see any question or further desires to share. So we may say goodbye. And thanks a lot again for being so numerous with me tonight. I'm so happy. We will meet again in 1 week. You will receive the recordings and everything before Friday ends. And for today, that's all from the Italian side of the Alps. Lots of kisses and hugs. Ciao. Ciao, ciao.